Hello, guys, and welcome back to Lessons Told by Within the Cauldron.
Hello, how you
What are we
doing?
talking about tonight?
Hello, everyone. My dog is deciding to try to raid me right now. But yeah, how you doing, Nico? I hope everything's going well for you.
Yeah, things are going good here.
Tonight we're going to talk about the Eightfold Path.
Ooh,
A very important lesson, I think, for anybody who practices any kind of religious path. Will help them out. It's a lifelong journey. You know, you can read it once, go through it once, and when you first start, then come back to it later. But also, I find it to be one of those lessons that are really important. You know, it's a lifelong guide to the practice of spiritualism, any kind of religion, uh, your magical practice, your personal solitary practice. You know, it's one of those lessons that I find very important. I first came across it through Raven Grimassi, through his Encyclopedia of Wicca Witchcraft years ago. And we kind of, what would you say, added to it. You know, it's one of those things that magically you just want to keep pushing it throughout your whole life. You know, it's one of these things that will help you spiritually grow as far as your magic, your personal life. It'll give you Stoic teachings without even realizing it. So, what do you think about this lesson today? You think that people will like it? I hope they do.
I think so. There's a lot of things similar to it in other traditions, but I really like how it's done, and it makes a lot of sense, and it's really easy to incorporate into an existing practice. But what kind of are
Yeah. So, like I
the
said, well, let me rephrase. What was he saying?
what are the 8 paths?
Well, anyway, the one that we're going to start out on is the Eightfold Path to the Center of Life, which is an early summary of the path of the Buddhist practices, which can also be incorporated into witchcraft, Druidism. You know, your solitary practice, if you're eclectic, you know, it's one of these things where, yeah, it'll help you out. You know, it's like The Eightfold Path consists of 8 practices: constraint, meditation, concentration, projection, breath control, dance, worship, and merging. Okay. And with the constraint, right understanding, right action, right understanding, trying to understand properly, understand your lessons properly, understand conversations properly, and how you view things going on around you. Meditation is right thought. You want your meditations to go well, have the right thought about them. When you're going into learning your meditations, think right, be right. It's like I learned early on, is if you have the right action, you'll have the right thought, and if you have the right thought, you'll have the right action. And this one definitely, meditation is very important for all of us within the craft. And I know people don't like me using the word craft, but it is important within our spiritual life to have an understanding of what meditation is and what it does, because meditations help you go into your astral worlds. It also helps you, especially within witchcraft, to know perceive when things are going to happen, when it's not going to happen. It gives you that right thought, because that's what magic is. It's right thought. It is your thought, your mind. Then concentration, that is where you learn to focus in upon what you are doing. It gives you the correct speech, when you are doing things in the right way, the right alignment. Projection is right action. So you want to project with the right action, because magic can go awry if you do not have the right projection or the right action.
Yeah, and that's like
Um,
the person's intent or the energy that they're directing. And
yeah,
also like
yeah,
the time and
exactly.
place and like working in our own favor.
Oh yeah, uh, and it's like breath control. If you don't know how to breathe in and breathe out, like for me, when I'm doing magic or creating a circle, the words come out upon my breath. So, I want to have the right thought, projection, and livelihood on, because I want it to become alive. And, it's important that when my hands start to heat up, so I'm on the right track. But when we doing magic, always remember to breathe. Don't get intense. And don't get me wrong, it's okay to get a little intense, but don't get so intense that you lose your mark on what you're actually trying to do.
Hmm.
Dance. Dance is for the right effort. We should dance in our rituals.
Hmm.
Yes, baby. Yes. And we should actually, take that time out
Hmm.
to do the right effort, toward our rituals.
Oh yeah.
Our worship, right mindfulness. When we worship, make sure that you are worshiping correctly. In other words, don't go into a ritual anger. We don't want to be angry during our rituals, because bad things happen.
Hmm.
Merging. Our meditation and our concentration should merge together, because when we are meditating, we are also concentrating. We are also meditating. We are also concentrating. And we are also projecting. And I think that's so important, that when we are doing our merging within ourselves, that our meditation and our concentration is set forth with a truth to ourselves. Yeah, my dog's pestering me. Sorry. But also, most importantly, I think more of the term of merging also talks about centering and grounding,
Hmm.
you know, and all of these things that we are talking about. This is exactly almost about aligning our chakras and bringing them to a centeredness where we can actually do our meditations, our ritual work, our magic work. Thank you. Anyway, I don't know how far we're going to get through all of this, because we have a pretty big thing here.
Yeah.
The practice of these in our life leads to a center of life, gnosis, knowledge of self through the experience of the self. Each of the paths is practiced in a daily life, in the religious life. The religious life is the microcosm of a larger holistic life, the macronism. The Eightfold Path is the center of the Gnostic, Wiccan, or Witch religion. It's the heart of spirit. It can only be taught by direct experience in the direction of a personal teacher. The Eightfold Path unlocks the ability to direct one's energy, emotion, intent, and psychic being to the place, time, or person desired. This is an art as well as a skill. It is perhaps the most important, as it enables us to create our own universe and express our divine nature. It is the expression of our free will, our spiritual consciousness, and the responsibility that accompany them. These practices start with the understanding that the body and mind work in a corrupted way, right view, followed by the entering of the Buddha's path of self observance, self restraint, and the cultivating kindness and compassion and accumulating. Okay, so that covers these in this way: the right understanding, the right thought, the right speech, the right action, right livelihood, the right effort, the right mindfulness, and the right concentration. Now, this part, last part that I just read off, that is from the Buddha's Eightfold Path. So, right understanding, understanding things that's going around us, understanding our spiritual path, or trying to gain an understanding. The right thought is to project within our mind of our thought to make it right, just, an understanding of what we are thinking. The right speech is to try to say everything within a positive manner. The right action is to always try to take the right action of, how can I say it? I wouldn't say trying to be holier than now, but trying to be a person who, when we do things, that it is just. In other words, just because we get peed off at somebody doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to go curse them. Or if I disagree with somebody, doesn't mean I'm going to go beat them up. It means that You will try to take the right way, the right action, the correct action. Right livelihood means not to necessarily sponge off people, but it means try to create a livelihood for yourself and to keep it holy within our way, a path of lightness. Right effort. Always try to put the correct effort into whatever we are endeavoring in. It could be this, we want to put the right effort into understanding, right understanding into our spiritual path, our religious beliefs, our spiritual solitary life, which to me is very important. It's always taking the right effort to understand each other, the right understanding to understanding our solitary path, to challenge it. Then the next one is right mindfulness, to be mindful of things that are going around you, spiritually and non spiritually. Understand your religious beliefs, find a truth within them. Just don't take it because I say it or you say it. Find a mindful reason of why you are following your path. What is your mind telling you? What is your actions telling you? To me, mindfulness doesn't necessarily mean everything's a thought, but it's also being courteous, kind, compassionate, having sympathy. Then the last one here is right. When you're doing things within your life, if you're following the eightfold path, your concentration will become very abundant. The concentration will help you in projecting. It will help you in your thoughts. It will help you in your actions. It will help you in your livelihood. It will help you in the right effort. It will help you in the right mindfulness. It will help you project and understand why you are doing the things that you're doing, or try to give you a reason why to be kind and mindful of your brother or sister who may be truly blessed and you're trying to understand them, or why your brother or sister is lost and you're trying to understand them and be kind at the same time. Okay. Constraint, right understanding. When we do this first step, you can write down in a journal or a piece of paper how we observe people and how others observe us. So, in other words, I'd probably walk up to you, since you're a spiritual brother, and say, hey, how do I look to you? Not necessarily in the physical, but in the spiritual, and see what the reaction is. It's better to do that to people who don't really know you, but see from afar, because a lot of truths come out there. So when we're observing ourselves, does that mean how we feel, think of ourselves? It could. Observe everything. Yes, of course. This is not supposed to hurt us. This is supposed to make us better people. Sometimes we have to take it to the negative to make them positive, which I've had. We've done this lesson, and I've done this, I don't know how many times, with like students, and they will observe me. They'll tell my negative things to me. They're quick to do that. But also they tell me the good things about myself, which usually outweighs the bad things, which is good for me. But um, Let me get back to this. Okay. We have to take the negative things to make them positive. And there are times we won't be able to do that depending upon the circumstances beyond our control. Between practices, observe behaviors to avoid and an attitude of moderation in all things. We learn to manage our personal energy in such a way that it constantly adds to our journey to gnosis. So, in other words, observe yourself. And if you don't have nobody to observe you, you're within a family structure that doesn't really have anybody who practices. Put up a camera. Observe yourself through your camera. That is a very truthful lens. And keep the camera up several days so that you get used to it and eventually you'll forget about it. Then you'll see your true self. Then rewind and watch. Observe. Find your truth of who you truly are. And that's what I would do if I was a solitary practicing within a structure that nobody else practices. It's the only way that you can become truthful. And if you know that you have bad behaviors, try to correct it. Meditation and being truthful with yourself.
Absolutely. It takes 7 days to break a habit.
Sometimes longer.
Mm-hmm.
I've only had maybe 3 cigarettes within the last year.
Wow.
And I find that totally amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone a year with only 3 cigarettes. My biggest snag. I can quit drinking. I can quit the partying. That damn nicotine. It's an
It's
observant
hard.
itself. What do? Well, I replaced a cigarette. Instead, I got this nasty ass vape that I'm using. But I do feel better not smoking cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that I have observed in myself. And eventually, I'm just going to go to a zero vape, where there's no nicotine in it. It's just flavor. Just to give my mouth something to do until I don't need that nicotine anymore. Okay, right thought. Meditation is the way that this lesson is set to have your subconscious and your conscious mind to be in sync. Meditation is very important, very, very important, because this will teach you how to find truth, find your God and Goddess, find about your true self, how to do mediumship. I've watched you and Chrissy do your class. When was that? Last weekend or something like that? You guys did a mediumship class.
Yep, the first week
and
was
everything.
done. Around week 2.
You guys, yeah, yeah. And when you guys were talking about how to do your meditations, this falls right into it.
Oh yeah.
Because a meditation is the way, the lesson is that to have your subconscious and your conscious mind be in sync with each other. And the homework for this may be more difficult than some others. It is difficult to start, because you have to learn to train yourself to focus for a certain amount of time.
Yeah. But if you have,
For
2
me,
minutes,
I like
5 minutes, like for me, 15 minutes of meditation is huge. Like getting my brain to shut off for 15 minutes is a whole accomplishment. And I commend the people that can sit there and meditate for hours. My brain does not work like that.
Well, you know what? And they have the meditation music. Well, I came across this one that deals with Hecate,
Hmm.
and I started working on this meditation. You know, meditating and centering and grounding through this meditation. That's all I wanted to do was center and ground and listen to the music. But what I ended up doing was astral projecting.
Hmm.
I was actually get my vibrational rate to raise up to a point where it was I could feel it around me. I could feel my astral body just quivering. You know what I'm saying? It was just
Yeah.
and it was really a great feeling. And I find myself doing that quite often.
Hmm.
You know, and it helps you learn to meditate while you are centering and grounding
Hmm.
because that raises your vibrational rate. And I think that, when you're doing this and you're going through this experience, after you're done, especially for the beginner, or maybe even if you're advanced, um, write down your experience,
Hmm.
you know, write it down.
It's a
You
great
know,
way to get personal gnosis.
yes, exactly. It's like when people used to come up to me all the time and ask me, I want to learn witchcraft. I would have them write down, a paragraph or a page of why they want to learn witchcraft. Then just before their first initiation, I would have them write that paragraph again. And it was so that they could reflect upon what they was learning. Well, it's the
Hmm.
same way with your meditations, your experiences. When you're centering and grounding or drawing down the moon, this is a gateway to drawing down the moon.
Hmm.
To do your sun rituals, to do your Sabbaths. I think it's very important that we understand meditation. You know,
Yep.
it's more or less a self hypnosis, but there's one big difference. When you're a solitary, you'll say, wow, did it really happen? But when you're with a group and you learn to do this and you have the same experience, it becomes everybody's truth. So then it becomes what? It doesn't become like a self evident lie or I think that it happened. It is, wow, this really happened. It's one of these things that are very important. Write down your thoughts, you know, on this. I can't stress that enough. Write it down. Keep a journal and, do this just before you go to sleep. Meditate just before you go to sleep. Ask the God and Goddess to come to you just before you go to sleep. Do a meditation about it. Create a meditation.
Oh yeah. Ask for signs in your
Blaze your
dreams.
own spirit. Yeah. Well, actually, your dreams are a gateway to another dimension, but a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of witches do not realize that when you're having a dream, it may be a dream, it may be anxiety, but sometimes it is very real. And this is why I say this, is because a while back, I, I must have been dreaming, and Chrissy woke me up. Well, my vortexes was open, and when she woke me up, I opened up my eyes, and I felt pain in my hands and in my third eye. And there was a memory. And was that real? Yes, it was real to me. I wasn't happy with Chrissy for waking me up because I felt pain, but it validated for me that what I was experiencing in my dreams was real.
Hmm.
And when the vortex is being open, that's for me meditating the night before I'm going
Yep.
to sleep. I
You
have my
went to bed
chakras
open.
open. I was asking my God and Goddess to come into my dreams. what happened? I had that experience. And Chris goes, woke me up at an appropriate time for me. Meditation, you know, another validation for my personal path, you know. So what's your thoughts on this, you know, about,
I think
you know,
absolutely they're fantastic because they're uh, kind of the same things that I teach, where it's emotional regulation and how to be accountable for your emotions and not do workings when you're not in a clear head, and
yeah,
then meditations with breaching that subconscious and higher self in the spirit world and how we use our senses to interact with them. And like their core
well,
foundations, not just to witchcraft, but navigating life.
it's it's the same thing as a prayer, you know. A meditation is a prayer. You know, it's like
Mhm.
the Bible. The Bible is a magical book.
Yeah,
You
you
just
can
have to
absolutely meditate
decipher
on Bible
the magic
passages.
that's within.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I have a friend who's a
and
psalmist,
it's
and
like
that's exactly what he does. He'll sit there and read psalms and go into meditation.
yeah, it's like on this next one, concentration, right speech. Focusing on the conscious mind is something that we do every day. We must focus on what we see before we speak, which many fail to do. And I agree with that. And focus on whose company we keep. We want to be surrounded by, you know, how we correlate our speech. We don't want to offend. And I have a bad habit of doing that. I don't correlate my speech properly to my brain. My intent will be good, but the words will be off. You know, I get in trouble every once in a
Yep,
while,
I do
but
too.
I think everybody does. Everybody does. You know,
Hmm.
we have to be self-aware about that, and we do have to focus in on what we speak. And you know, I'm the first to admit sometimes I fail, but sometimes the words come out so perfect,
Hmm.
and you know, it's overwhelming. You know,
Well, not just to others, to ourselves.
yeah, yeah,
Like, I'm tired, I'm sick all the time. I can't do this right. Those you're bringing those things into your life.
yeah.
My
And we,
my biological mother did one where she kept saying she needed a break. She told her spirit she needed a break. She was in the grocery store, tripped over a rug and broke her kneecap. And she was in a wheelchair for 6 months and everything was on pause. She absolutely got the break, both physically and metaphorically, but she kept asking for it.
yeah, you know, another thing is our mind is very important, and we use it constantly, even when we're sleeping. It is a constant. Does our soul sleep? Yeah, I think that our soul does sleep to a point. Our body definitely, you know, rest. Um, our physical state, our heart, but our minds are on a constant move. You know, we don't stop thinking. We may think that we do, but we don't.
Mhm.
And usually, the way that you can tell that is when you are having a magical experience and you are sleeping, and you wake up the next day, even after 8 hours sleep, and you are exhausted.
Mhm. I had developed a ritual to counter that, to
And
reclaim your energy
I,
back.
I go through this all the time because I'll be thinking about, you know, our next lessons told, or
Mhm.
concentrating, and we're bouncing something that Chrissy or the kids has asked me to think about,
Yep.
or their next doctor's appointment. Our minds are constantly moving. You know,
Mhm.
even when we're sleeping, we are focusing in on whatever's coming up next, or what is happening magically next.
Yeah.
It's one of those deals. And we have to be aware of what is happening all around us. Is it harder for you to concentrate at certain times of day? For me, yes and no. Out in the afternoon, it's a little harder for me to concentrate. But in the mornings, toward noon, I love to do my meditations. In the evening, I like to do my rituals, preferably around 9, midnight. I like to do the Sabbats. Unless there's a solar ritual like summer solstice, I usually do it during the day. And winter solstice, I like to do that at first light. But other than that, I like my rituals toward the evening. I like that witching hour, 9, 12, and 3.
It depends. I do my morning rituals, like my devotionals, first thing in the morning, sit in peace with my coffee and meditate. Then I go about my day.
Yeah,
And then if I'm
I
doing
like
like
getting
big
up.
workings, I like to do them at night once everybody calms down and goes to bed. But I find like
Yeah.
very early in the morning and then late at night are kind of my go-tos.
Another thing that I want to point out to people, what helps you relax and concentrate is music,
Mm,
reading, dreaming. I like to daydream, but I also love my music too. You
I
know,
like to go sit in the
it
forest.
helps me concentrate.
Mm,
Wow, quit. The dog is clawing the dog out of me. I didn't do nothing to you. Quit clawing at me. I love you. Anyway, um, this is some homework for somebody. If they want to do it, um, write down what is hard for you to concentrate on the most, and maybe how you can resolve it. To work your way past it, and also write down what is the easiest way for you to concentrate. You know, become self-aware of this. It's very important for us to figure out our limits and what is hard for us to do. As far as concentration, because when you learn this, you're one step closer to setting your spirit free. Magically, and doing your meditations and your rituals and everything. But that's what this lesson's about. Quit. Please quit. Not hopping up on the lap. Projection. Projection is the ability to direct one's energy, emotion, intent, or psychic being to the place, time, or person desired. This is an art as well as a skill, and I agree totally with this. This lesson's about 15, 20 years old. So if it's out of step with time, I apologize. But to me,
It's held
this
up just fine.
is perhaps the most important as it enables us to create our own universe, express our divine nature. It is the expression of our free will, our spiritual consciousness, and the responsibilities that accompanies them. We project our energies into something, and it will happen. This will also be your toughest one. Astral projection. This is something that we will get into, hopefully much later, but, we did talk about a little bit, about astral projection and how to use our psyche. You know, for me, projection is like when we are in a full moon ritual and our thoughts are projecting out to the goddess to empower us, for us to draw down the moon. In
Hmm.
other words, for the magic to come from the heavens to us so that we can do our magic.
Yeah,
That is her projection. That is our will manifesting and projecting outward. But we can also project into ourselves to have a magical response within ourselves. Hence, drawn down the moon projects it inward. You want to take it down to your hot heart chakra, to your third eye. Important, because the deeper that you can get that divine essence within you, from you projecting up to the goddess or projecting to create a circle, it all comes from within. And I can't stress it enough. Pull that magic within you. But you can also project it out in your circle creation. When you enchant your herbs or your crystals, that is a projection. You are projecting your will into it. When we are healing, we are projecting our life essence toward a being or to an animal of some sort. We have to be realistic in how we look at it. Hopefully I'm voicing that correctly, but it's one of those things where we have to dig deep within ourselves. Meditations are a projection of what we desire. It is our intent. Our intent is a projection. Okay, let's see. How do you project? Okay. Astral projection. Okay. It will help if you write in your personal journal as well as your spiritual life homework. Light a candle. Project your energy into putting it out. Take your finger and snap it above it, or point to it and shout. Or take two of your fingers like your thumb and index and get close to it and split the flame or raise the flame or lower the flame. Now, when I was younger into witchcraft, I remember during rituals, and after we'd go through the ritual, we'd be drinking our ritual wine. And I would take my finger and I would point at the altar candles and make them rise about 3 or 4 inches. Then I would start thinking small and I would, project them to go back down to being normal. Is that a projection? Yes. Is that astral projection? It is a form of astral projection. Think about it, because you are reaching out. You're actually thinking about it going down. So you are, in essence, projecting through the astral.
I pick the winds up and increase the breeze.
Okay. Do an energy ball. Is that a projection, an astral projection, creating an energy ball? You put them side by side. Don't let them touch. And while in a circle of motion without touching your hands, make the circle into a ball more or less. Imagine a ball that you are moving around that ball without touching it. Almost like you was making a ball. So it's energy. Pretend that it's like Play-Doh and you're shaping it. If you're feeling heat within your hands, and you are doing it correctly. And this is where a lot of neophytes within the craft or within their spiritual path think that they're fire elemental witches or druids or whatever. It's not that you're a fire, you're an element of fire. It's that that's the way magic feels. It feels, for me, it feels hot.
Warm, tingly.
There's some, yeah, yeah. But I
Sometimes
feel
like
heat.
static.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's
Sometimes cool.
it's a magnetic influence
Hmm.
upon or on and through our spirit, through our astral projection within our hands.
Hmm.
Okay, I, I'm I'm pretty sure that I'm correlating my words right
Yeah,
on saying that it is a point of astral projection because your energy is leaving your hands. It is becoming a magnetic influence, and that is what our astral body is.
yep. You can move your
At,
consciousness into that bowl too.
yeah, okay. Take that energy, that ball of, of, of energy, and start seeing colors into it: blue, violet, green, red, purple, and in
Like this.
between. Yeah. And once you get good at it, you just start making these regularly. You can use them for healing and spell work, and most definitely raising energy because it's the same process that I used to create the energy ball. It's the same process that I also cast a circle with.
Yeah.
This is the exact
Charge your
same
tools.
energy that I use
Hmm.
to open portholes to the east, north, south, and west.
Hmm.
Same energy. It's also the same energy that I use to, what I would say, consecrate and imbue a candle, a
Hmm.
pendulum, my pinnacle, my ademe. Except it's just a different thought process, same
Hmm.
energy, but it's how I'm projecting it within my mind. It's the image that I have in my mind and how I will that energy. Okay, breath control. The understanding or practice of how interconnected our emotions and personal energy are to the breath in our daily life and in ritual. By altering the breath alone, we can alter our mood and also our level of energy. It is most readily available and subtle to our paths. Your breath carries energy, and when we breathe, we alter our body's entire chemistry. Every breath, whether long or short, sends oxygen through our bodies, and every single nerve ending and hormone is affected by it. What is good about this fold and how we can use it in ritual? Through deep breathing, we are able to alter our mood, altering hormones to balance the different aspects and cause various mind mood alterations. In ritual, we can use this to help us achieve a state and level of consciousness that we would otherwise not gain. I truly, yeah, I can relate to this one. Also, it helps us focus and maintain our energies at a constant or even a balance, particularly within a flux within our circle. Breathing is a big help during ritual spells, invocation, and it helps us think about what happens when we hyperventilate, we black out, we have no energy. The chemistry in our body does not have a lot to do with our breath, not bad breath, okay? And but how can anyone? But how can we relate? How can we relate to it? for years and years, I've used my breath to help me channel my energy into magic. Now I sit at the center of the circle and I cast a circle from the altar instead of doing like I used to. I used to, use my breath to help cast a circle with my hand or my tame or my wand. Now I stand in the middle of the circle and I create an energy ball. And I visualize that energy ball hitting the center of my feet and going out and creating a sphere.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, with me knowing that I'm getting older, I've smoked a hell of a lot of cigarettes, I'm short breath. So how does this correlate to me? I'm taking what would you say, a defect, a negative, and making it into a positive.
Mm-hmm.
Because your breathing is very important with the magic. And I didn't realize that when I was younger. So I am moving forward into my practice as I'm becoming elder and realizing I'm strong enough magically, but breath wise, going through and saying this long chant of going around the circle and focusing my energy at the same time isn't going to happen. But if I do it all at once and I visualize that sphere hitting, and what you're looking for when that energy hits, you want to feel it hit at your feet. You want to feel it go up and around. And that energy that we was talking about earlier about, well, I feel the heat or I feel the tingling, that's what you want to feel. What do you want to see visually? Now, take a look at that picture behind you. And guess what? That is what you're going to see moving through your circle if you call your elementals correctly. That's the way it is for me.
I agree.
You got anything you want to add to this?
I mean, breath's important for everything. I use it for my grounding. That long inhale, long exhale is really good to
Yeah.
just give yourself a quick ground. It's very vital in my spell work.
Yeah, I
use
didn't
breath.
realize how important breathing was,
Yeah.
until
Well, I mean, we need to do it to
the
live,
last
but
few
yeah,
years.
it's extremely important in witchcraft. I blow on
Yeah.
things to cleanse them. I use cycled breath to enter meditative states. It's kind of a big corner of my practice as far as like
No.
it's something that's involved in a lot of aspects of my practice.
Yeah, I've always taken my breath with magic as something that would always be there,
Hmm.
you know. And that's why I tell people, hey, quit smoking, man, it'll kill you. This last 2 years has been really rough for me because I can tell it, of how much of a toll that is taken, upon my body and taken away from me magically. And people, they take it for granted, you know. Like when I was younger, I used to think I was Superman. Well, I lost my hand and I found out that I wasn't Superman no more. I'm not. Then when my breath started going away from me when I was out in Colorado, then when I moved back here to Iowa, then I went back out to Colorado to see some friends. I found out really quick that I got a big problem. And just before that, the doctor told me to quit smoking. Well, I was expected to do this ritual out there. I couldn't do the ritual because I couldn't breathe. You know, so if you're smoking, quit. Don't take your breath. Your lungs permanent. It's something that it's going to be there forever. Take care of your
It's a
body.
complex thing for me because ritual smoking is a part of my practice.
Well, what
But I
I'm
try to
saying
do
is,
so sparingly.
what I'm saying is, don't abuse. You
Yeah.
know, it's like
And there's alternatives.
out in Colorado. I have friends who smoke a gram of shatter a day.
Hmm.
I could not compete. No way I could
No
compete
way,
with
no,
these
no.
people. You know, what are they doing to their lungs? It's like, holy crap.
Well, there's alternatives
It's the
too.
same way with cigarettes. You
Yeah,
can't do that. You know, you
I
can't
just found out
can't
about
choose.
T-cigarettes, and they're like herbal infused cigarettes with different tea blends. And you're still
Yeah,
inhaling smoke, don't get me wrong, but it's you can get them with different blends for different purposes and ritual. And I've been using those
yeah,
instead of cigars for feeding spirits, and it's much healthier on my lungs.
yeah, yeah. We have to be aware
Mhm.
of our magical practice. It's like I've done rituals where we're burning mugwort and we're in an enclosed room, and all of a sudden it becomes this big, hot box. You're sitting inside that mugwort. You get after a while, you can feel
Oh yeah.
it. Magically, you can feel it, but you don't
Mhm.
realize how messed up your lungs are until you're through the ritual and you're out in that fresh air. And an hour or so later, you're going, "Oh my God, man, I got a lung infection." Well, duh,
Mhm.
because you sit in this room without no ventilation, and you're trying to, maybe you live in a city or something, and you don't want people to know, so you're in this enclosed room with curtains shut, windows are shut. You don't want people hearing your voice or what you're doing. What are you doing for yourself? You're hurting
Mhm.
yourself in the long run.
Crack the windows, pop the
So
door open an
take,
inch, put a fan in there, something.
yeah, you just be wise in your what you are doing, because your breath is so important to your magical practice. It's
Yes.
so important. And I cannot stress that enough, because without breath, you have no life, and you want to bring life to your ritual. You want to be able to talk these long phrases that we need to during our rituals to
Mhm.
keep them true. You don't want to be going through it and look at your coven mate and going, I can't do it, I can't breathe. You're going to have to take over.
Yep.
But
You're
you're supposed to be
elbowing
the
them to
high
take
priest.
over, and
Yeah, yeah. So take care of yourself.
mhm.
I've watched a lot of my friends abuse their bodies. From shooting up to drinking too much, and they just destroy their body, their
Mhm.
temple. You know, and that's why I tell people, be cautious in your rituals and what you are doing.
Yeah.
You know, be alert,
Mhm.
especially if you're young and you don't know what a lot of these ritual herbs will do to your body.
Oh yeah, and be aware
Be
of like
cautious.
what these herbs do when you burn them. I've
Yeah.
seen people put
Or-
yew-berries on charcoals before. 3 yew-berries is enough to drop a grown man.
Yeah. Well, I knew some people here that lived here in the United States, and it was part of WBS, World Broadcasting System chat room system back in the day, and they had a bad thing happen to them. And that bad thing was that their little girl got ripped away from them. Their child got ripped away from them. I can't remember if it's a boy or girl, but I'm just going to use a girl as an example. And they've, they've been practicing for quite a few years. And they knew the herbs, they knew the pros and cons, but they decided to sacrifice themselves because they could not live without their child. So what they did was and I recommend nobody to do this. Don't get no ideas. They took a briquette and put mistletoe on the top of it. They committed suicide together. Can you imagine what that did to their lungs? They suffocated because your lungs and your skin will blister up with the extreme contact with mistletoe. And I want people to be aware of camphor, mistletoe, all these other herbs that we use within our rituals. Be cautious. Know what you are getting into.
Know what you're using. Know what the side effects are.
Yeah.
Especially if this is an herb you haven't worked with before. You may be allergic to it, and you wouldn't know until you put that on the charcoal and you start inhaling the smoke.
Yeah, that's why it's important that when we are doing our magical endeavors, that ventilation. That's why our ancestors practiced outside a lot of our rituals. Well, anyway, I better get back to our lesson. Okay, dance, right upward. Dance is an understanding and practice and rapport of our physical being. Using movements, whether actual dances, postures, gestures, movements, or simply walking, can create, direct, and alter our energy for use. Dancing elevates our energy. Spiral dance, belly dance, or learning to belly dance. How about terrain dance? Can we all dance? Even a mental dance. Elevate your body energies. In other words, raise your energies up. In this mental state, you can raise the energy through it. It is a different type of energy, and by dancing, you're raising the energy to be bigger and bigger and bigger. And let's see here. To the point where you can actually stop storms from happening. And it has been done. And after your energy is raised and you finally come down from a high, you will ground the energy and giving it back to the Mother Earth. But also, you can take this energy, which we have done in ritual many times, and put it into a cone of power. We can project that energy into a cone of power. And then you can release it with a group mindset of intent.
We release ours for a theme. So if it's like a summer ritual and we're working on like the fruits of our labor and things like that, we're sending that out to the people that we're thankful for supporting us during that and things like that. Or if somebody in the community needs healing, whoever that may be for the people involved, it could be multiple people, and then we're sending that all out.
Yeah. But if we're not going to do nothing with this energy, give it back to Mother Earth.
Absolutely.
She's most deserving. Or give it to the cosmos so that either the gods could use it, because we should develop a good relationship with the gods, the elementals, and nature. And to learn how this energy works, we were talking about raw energy from the ground up, borrowing from Mother Earth, and raising it to the Father. Man, I didn't realize how long this lesson was. We've already hit an hour and 5 minutes here. Well, anyway, write your experiences through dancing and raising energy and using it for magic. Write down what you experience. Write your truth. And never write somebody else's truth. It's a good idea to to verbally say what your experience was to your coven mates or to your friends. But remember, it is your truth what is important in these lessons. And compare it, do this over and over and over. Write your experiences down. And throughout your life as a magical practitioner, and like I stated before, it doesn't matter what path you're on. It's that you are doing and you're trying to evolve, you're trying to enlighten yourself. Write your experiences and be truthful about what it feels like and what it takes for you to raise these energies, and your experiences during when you're in a ritual and you're experiencing a magical event. You're feeling that kind of power center upon the balefire or upon the high priest. Write down those experiences. What feeling when these energies move around in a circle? What are you experiencing magically when you're participating in this great dance? It's important to know. Worship. Worship is our sense of knowing and a rapport with something more than that exists, other than our mere mortal self. It is the sense of the divine that spurs us on to grow a spiritual way and a use of practices and devices to harness and control our energy. Worship is an act of becoming divine. The rituals, the rites, are most important expressions to our worship, as they allow us to practice in a very intense manner all that we have come to know and are able to do. Okay, for example, the rite of fertility is the most important of the rites as it represents to us all that is the creator and creation, and the existence of both within each of us. Our rapport with the divine in our worship is a growing and living thing in and of itself. As our worship grows in its depth, and subtly, so do we. It is the very reason for our being and how we worship. Worship comes from within, and that is a very true statement. It is a connection between your soul and your deity. And the worship can come in these ways as well: sex magic, sensuality, eroticism. Worship is any act and all acts devoted to another. Simply put, someone once talked about worshiping yourself as a goddess or god, whether you're a man or a woman. By not being afraid to touch yourself. Sex magic. Who did this? It was at Ledge's summer solstice. Okay, and this actually happened. This was an actual experience where this person was talking about self. And it was talking about the magic of self. And this experience happened at Ledge's here in Iowa at a campground. And it was during summer solstice in 2001. And she started touching herself. Does anyone know why she did this? Well, that is something that people are going to have to think about. Why did she do this? And then it wasn't about masturbation or anything like that. What this woman was doing wasn't masturbation. She was touching herself, and I mean hair, eyes, nose, breath, stomach, etc. She was getting in touch with her inner self through self exploration. I think it was a way of expressing yourself to attune oneself with the goddess. You need to be comfortable with yourself and tear down the boundaries you have within yourself. The female sex organ is the closest tool to creation, arguably the fastest way to our inner goddess. The body is a temple. Sex magic is one of the oldest forms of magic practiced by our ancestors to assure crops, births, and all manner of things into being. Worship can go beyond the lines of what you do in ritual. So in this sense, the body is sacred, a place, an inner temple of its own. How can we learn from self control from this kind of worship? And how can we learn self exploration with a means is a way than just more than sex to get off. We know thine own self is to believe in thyself and to trust thyself. This is one example that I'm covering. And the reason why I chose this one, it seems that to be a touchy issue so that we can learn from the ways from ourselves. And once we know ourselves, then we have a concept of divine. Well, if you have broken it down to boundaries you have with yourself, then you can give the divine a way in. What was so really cool, my personal experience when this was happening, was when we looked into the fire that was at the campsite. We could actually see a pinnacle within the coals. It wasn't just one singular person, I, seeing it. It was many who was around. And there was like 20 people around when this lesson was going on. This happened early within me and Chrissy's magical life when we was really exploring who God and Goddess was. And this woman took the time out to give this lesson. Was this lesson worth it? Yes. And why I say that is because it brought a reverence to me of how many different ways there was to worship the goddess, but also to realize that God and Goddess is within us. And you just didn't have to be female to see this. And why I say this is that within that fire, when I saw that pinnacle, it was bringing balance to all of our minds and self-reverence, how important to recognize the balance of God and Goddess that are within you. And somebody else could probably walk away saying a completely different thing of why that pinnacle showed up. Was it truly magical? Yes. I've been in rituals where, we saw the God and Goddess. We've had rituals where the deer have come out of the woods and bowed toward us. I have seen rituals where the sky has turned purple and butterflies and bees were flying all over the place. It's understanding that we as humans have to realize that we do have masculine and feminine. And I'm not saying that you have to be gay or bisexual. This is also within a heterosexual perspective, that there is a balance within us. And it's up to us to understand that balance, And I'm saying that no matter how you worship, that concept is always going to be within you. Whether you're a Christian, a Muslim, or a Jew, or a witch, or a druid, or whatever, Buddhist, Taoism, you name it, it's always going to be there. Because without the holy divine connection within creation, we would not be. Hence the fivefold kiss within a ritual. That is an acknowledgement, like for me, to acknowledge to the woman that she is divine. And vice versa when a woman does the fivefold kiss upon me. And if you guys don't know what the fivefold kiss is, well, YouTube it after we're done. Or look it up in a book. I'm not going to give away all the secrets, but have an understanding of why we have 5 fingers. Why is there 5 points within a star? Why is the fivefold kiss? Why is there a Trinity? Why is these things so important? Why is the 8th path so important? And we've only covered a point of Buddhism. How important are these things and understanding? We should take time, and understand the divine is always within us. Always. So do you want to add anything to Nico? You alive?
Yeah, can you hear me? No, I think you're spot on. I love that story, by the way. That was beautiful.
I do now. It was part of our magical experiences.
Yeah.
But please let me talk. Let me talk. And it was beautiful. People have to realize that magic is happening within it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
What we see, what we touch, what we taste, hear, good or bad, is all magical.
Yeah.
But the thing is whatever experience that, good or bad, is the paper within it, this masculine and feminine. The only difference between a boy and a girl is the male has a tallywhacker and the female doesn't. And we create the greatest mystery, birth, whether it's through a female, through like a female dog and a male dog. But it's also a very magical thing. It is one of the greatest mysteries.
Looks like we lost Chris, guys. He'll be back here in just a moment. Let's see if I can pick up where he left off. So the homework for worship is, practicing worship however you like. I'm not gonna say that you have to go touch yourself unless you want to. But take things to the altar. Um, we have the great rites and the fertility rituals that can be done with partners or by ourselves. Um, you can try any type of worship, and uh, they're all expressions of worship, whether that's worshiping your partner or the gods, the land spirits, you name it. Looks like Chris should be back here in just a second. And I think our next one is merging, which is the rite of concentration and meditation. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Hopefully our video didn't get messed up.
Shouldn't be.
But yeah, all of this stuff, Nico, that, what I was explaining the last little bit, that was very real. The stag, the bumblebees, the sky. That was very real. The pinnacle and the fire. When Chris years, we've rewritten it several times, but throughout the years, it is a truth. And it has helped, I don't know how many different people. We came up with the concept of the Eightfold Path through Raven Gramasi. So it was existent before we actually started probably learning the path. I don't think it's something that was created just on a whim by Raven Gramasi, because the noble truths and stuff like that have existed for a long time. We just incorporated witchcraft within a Buddhist view. We incorporated both in the same way with this Seven Noble Truths. We incorporated that within the Eightfold Path to bring it to a fuller lesson, so that you have many different opinions and many different ways and approaches. And it has served us throughout these years as a good and powerful way to learn the path. If you want to really get into it, this lesson, my first exposure wasn't necessarily through this book here, but it was through I think it was through one of Raven Gramasi's earlier books. And it's one of these things that I want people to understand, that it is a well-written magical document in my eyes, because it will guide somebody throughout their whole magical life if they keep going through it. Every year you go back and you start tearing it apart, and you start going through these magical truths. You will become a well-rounded practitioner of magic, no matter what your path is. You could, like I said, you could be a Christian and actually use the Eightfold Path. And we've only gone through half of it tonight. But I think that we should end it here, because we're almost to an hour and a half. But I'd like to thank you.
We can go deeper into it in a part 2.
And yeah, definitely a part 2, because I only got through half of it.
Yeah.
That was only, more or less the center of life. And we actually haven't even really hit what I would call the noble truth. The actual Eightfold Path. And, like I said, these lessons were very important to me. They're very dear in my heart. And I've used them throughout my magical craft life, Well, anyway, I love you, brother. Thank you so much.
Love you too.
I appreciate you, and I love you. And to all of our followers, like and subscribe, and join us again. And have a beautiful, blessed day or evening. Blessed be.
As well. Stay blessed, guys.